And welcome heroes and villains to Fjook Enterprises YouTube channel. Today we are continuing my quest for Fjooks to interview all the game masters I know as part of my Conversations with Fjook series. As in the past several interviews, I will let the guests introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Josh Wallace. I'm president of Angel Citadel, and I'm a game master.
So how did you get into game mastering?
Well, I was about 8 years old, actually, when I first got exposed to role-playing games. I was living in Ohio at the time, and across my backyard, my neighbor there, one summer, him and his friends were getting together in this pop-up camper that they had. And so I kind of snuck over there. I was playing and running around, and they had this odd looking red box that had a giant picture of a dragon on it. And it was the old basic set for Dungeons and Dragons, and I'd never seen it before. And so I kind of hung out, and they were kind enough to let me, and I listened in on a couple of their sessions, and I was hooked.
So, considering you started with the red box, you must have a lot of systems under your belt.
Just a few, yeah. I don't know. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since 1986, and through all the incarnations of it, except for 4th edition, which we won't talk about because we're going to pretend that didn't exist. I played Mech Warrior, I've played Shadowrun, I've played Traveler, I've played GURPS, I've played Palladium, I've played Fate and Cypher System and Numenera and Visible Sun and a couple of really odd games in between, little one-shots, things like that, at conventions like Murphy's World. I've been playing all kinds of stuff. LARPing, I've done World of Darkness. I've done, it goes on and on.
So, I assume as an 8-year-old you would want a GM right at 8. So, how'd you go from being a player to being a GM?
But it's funny. It wasn't too long after that. So, I had friends that were into Dungeons and Dragons, but nobody knew how to GM. And I was probably 12 when I started, just because nobody else wanted to. And when you're 12 and you don't know what you're doing, you buy a module and you just kind of you do your best. And so we just kind of muddled along, I guess, and figured things out as we went. Part of it, we'd go to a local gaming store, and people would be running games or whatever, and I'd kind of watch off to the side and see what they did. But it was there were probably tons of mistakes made, and I don't even remember them, But it was me playing with my friends, and it was fun. So.
Besides the one you already mentioned, 4th edition D&D, are there any systems you refuse to run?
Anymore, I won't run Shadowrun. I'm sure you talked to my wife about that. We both struggle with the direction Catalyst took Shadowrun, and it's I that's so hard because when I met Joanne, that was how we met. She actually was posting on Reddit for a virtual an online game for Shadowrun, and I answered that post, and she was my GM. That was 9 years ago or so. And so Shadowrun's really near and dear to our heart, and the fact that I have a hard time running that anymore really kind of breaks it. It breaks my heart, but I can't do it. There's too many other good games out there that I don't have time to play bad ones. And 6th edition is just a bad game.
Are there any games that you enjoy running?
I really get a kick out of running the more narrative games. I dig Numenera a lot. And, to a certain extent, the more generic Cipher system, it's a more generic version of the rule set that he introduced, Monty Cook did in Numenera. I'm starting to really enjoy Fate. I'm starting to look at some other systems like Low Fantasy Gaming and a new one that they just kickstarted, Low Life 2090, and those are both by Pickpocket Press. Those are both kind of interesting games, and Low Life is it's starting to scratch that Shadowrun itch that I've had, that I haven't been able to find really a good way to do. You look at things like Cyberpunk Red that just came out by Artel Sorian, and golly, that just screams Cyberpunk, but it's more crunchy of a game than I want to play right now. And this I think Pickpocket found a pretty good balance. Maybe not perfect, but it's about the best I've seen with Low Life. So that's going to be coming out for general release next year, probably first quarter next year. So,
as someone who's been jamming since they were 12, you must have more than a few stories of the players surprising you. Any of them coming to mind right now?
It's kind of funny because most of the time my players don't surprise me. And that's not because they don't do unexpected things. It's because I try not to have expectations. So what I found really quickly as I started GMing was that they would go off the rails really fast. And they wanted to do, whatever it was that they wanted to do. And I could either try and force them back into the story, or I could just let them go and see where that took us. And I chose the latter option. And that was before the proliferation of online, blogs and stuff that told you that, hey, you should let your players do all this stuff. We didn't have that kind of information. You guys want to go do this? All right, we'll go do this. Let's see what happens. But one that happened fairly recently. It was within the last year. We're playing Numenera, and I was running a module called the Vortex, and I was using it as a precursor because I was going to try and do a modified version of Slaves of the Machine God. It's fairly long campaign that they came out with for Numenera, and it's if you do the campaign the way it's presented, it covers a fairly large geographic area. And I got to thinking about it. I didn't want to have to deal with how my players got from point A to point B to point C when it was hundreds of miles out of the way, because it's essentially a tour of the ninth world. So this Vortex adventure, I decided to use as a gimmick to give them an interdimensional ship so that they could hop from place to place without actually having to travel place to place. Save the wandering encounters and stuff like that, because I hate wandering encounters. Anyway, so this cult has this ship, and they go in and are supposed to rescue this kid, and they meet up with the cult leader, and he starts wailing on him, and I'm thinking there's going to be this big battle, and they're going to kill the guy, and they're going to take over the ship because everybody else is going to leave. And then they're going to be able to find, how to figure out how to move this thing, and everything's going to be good. And what ended up happening was they negotiated with the cult leader to let the guy go that they were supposed to rescue, and then they just walked out. And so now they don't have a way to get from point A to point B to point C. And I'm like, oh, that didn't work. So I needed to come up with something else. And we ended up coming. I came up with a different idea, but that kind of thing happens. But you let it happen, and it's okay. You find another way, or you change the story, but they negotiated around a combat encounter, and that's okay. They're allowed to do that.
Switching gears slightly, are there any moments of everything going to plan that stick out in your mind?
Man, the one that I remember the best was actually in a Shadowrun game with my now wife. We were trying to protect a concert violinist from getting attacked. I guess he owed the mob or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the gimmick was, but the way we had it set up was he was playing the concert from underneath the stage, and what was on the stage was a hologram. And we were using that as a trap for the assassin. And so this guy, we egged him on, and he finally lost it and went to go attack the guy. And we trapped him on stage with what's essential. I mean, in the D&D world, it'd be a wall of force, right? But we put him in essentially an invisible force cage, and then started wailing on him. And he couldn't get out of it. And, it was just kind of an interesting use of some of the Shadowrun spells that I'd never seen before. And our mage went to town. It was pretty cool.
Ultimate question is, any advice for your fellow jams out there?
Yeah, kind of twofold. Number one, the first part of it is session zeros. If I've learned anything in 30 some odd years of GMing now, it's have a session zero. Get to where you and your players understand what the shared expectation is of your game, and then write your game around that. And when you do, the second part is find reasons to say yes. I've played with a ton of GMs that, they get this idea in their head that this is the way I want this to go, and this is the only way that it can go. And if it's not going this way, something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. There's nothing wrong with it not going to plan. Find a reason to say yes, because on the other side of yes is the fun. On the other side of the yes is the awesome. That's where you want to be. Empower your players to do cool stuff, and then riff off of their stories. You're there to keep the story going. You're not necessarily there to drive the story yourself. That's a shared thing. And so you combine that with session zero, and you say, all right, what kind of story do we want to tell? What kind of people do you want to play? What do you want to see? And then let them go play in that sandbox. And when you do that, and you let everybody's creative juices get going, there's some amazing stories that come out of that. And it's a lot of fun. And you still tell those stories years and years later.
As we end the interview, is there anything you are a part of that you would like to shout out?
So, like I said at the beginning, I'm president of Angel Citadel. We have a blog, angelcitadel.com. We come out with content twice weekly at least. And we actually are starting to release content out on Drive-Thru-RPG. We just did a starter kit that's going to be part of a larger product line called Hope's Horizon. It's a science fiction setting for Monte Cook Games Cypher system. And we're looking at some other options as well. But that's going to get expanded here over the next year to year and a half with a whole bunch of content, and we've got some more ideas coming behind it too. So look for a lot from us, and go check it out. Would love to know what you think.
I will link to that stuff that you mentioned in the description. And I hope you have a good day, and I hope those watching like, comment, and subscribe to both of the... Well, can you subscribe to a blog? I don't know how that works.
You can actually. You can subscribe to a blog. You can join our Facebook page. You can join our MeWe page. You can join our Discord. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's all kinds of ways that you can figure out what we've got going on. So,
well, I thank you for your time, and I will see my viewers in the next video.
a great one. Thanks.